Do you want me to start introductions?
Yes. Yeah, we're
Hi.
recording and ready to go. Thank you,
Yeah,
Kathy.
hi. I'm Kathy Shakura. I'm the first vice president, and I'm also the chair of the communications committee. And I am serving in this capacity as the moderator for this event because everybody has a lot to say, and I'm going to sit back and watch the proceedings and be the referee and throw the yellow cards. First of all, I'd like to introduce our guests. We have a special guest, Tim Briggs, who's the Pennsylvania House of Representatives Judiciary Committee Chair. We have Tim Sipe, a former member of the legislative. He's the chair of the legislative committee. We have scheduled on tap Rebecca Zollner to be participating. She is the chair of the PACE committee and the division chair for the Central Division. She is just newly appointed. And of course, we have Christy Jo King, who's the president, and we have Joanna Bird, who is the executive director of the NASW. So without further ado, I'd like to pass the baton to Joanna, and I will monitor the questions in the chat.
Yeah, and do please put comments, any kind of comments, questions in the chat. And we are a small enough group that, feel free to ask questions verbally at any point. I feel like that with this number of folks, it's good, it's reasonable for us to have an open conversation. But we want to talk about these amendment questions that are coming up, and I think some of the real repercussions for the social work profession. I don't want to hog the meeting, so although I do have a lot to say, so with that, I'll say, okay, we'll start with Tim Sipe. Why don't you get us kicked off and tell a little bit about the amendments?
Yeah, I think maybe it would be good for everybody's information. Maybe if we had the representative just kind of tell us how did we get here in terms of constitutional amendments being put on the ballot and the process for that happening. And I think our guest, Representative Tim Briggs from Montgomery County, the minority chair of the Judiciary Committee, would be the perfect person to give us an update on how did we get here.
A little bit of context. I can do that, and I can try to do it by being recorded, so that it kind of changes my my regular pitch on this. But constitutional amendments have been something that the majority party, the Republicans in the House and Senate, have been kind of pursuing more often. Many times when they try to pass a bill legislatively, the governor could veto it. So they've kind of turned to constitutional amendments as a way to get to what they're hoping to accomplish. So the two specific ones, one I think actually is going to be positive, or at least positive. It wouldn't change much, but the two that they are really strongly advocating for are regarding the emergency powers of the governor. And the way we got here was, during the beginning of the pandemic, the governor did his, stay-at-home orders, his masking requirements, which interestingly, a lot of those are under the public health code. They aren't emergency declaration. He does have an emergency declaration, and we can talk a little bit about the benefits of that. And the Republicans almost immediately tried to overturn his orders. They tried to impeach him. They tried to impeach Secretary Levine. They tried to make up the Constitution and say they could just pass a resolution and that would stop it. They took it to the Supreme Court. So when they kept failing their efforts to take away this power from the governor, they decided to amend the Constitution. Right now, there is a way to stop a governor who may not be, doing what I think is the best action. The legislature could pass a resolution to stop the order. The governor would have to veto it, and then 2/3 of the legislature could override his veto, and it would end. What they could never get 2/3, so what they're trying to amend is it just would take a simple majority to end the emergency order. So it while everything is hyper partisan and politically broken, I mean any good thing in Harrisburg just doesn't happen. I mean, it took us weeks just to figure out, it took months to figure out what we were doing. I mean, the governor came in very boldly and said, we have to protect citizens. This is what the benefit of an emergency order is. He consulted with experts. He made just difficult decisions. Imagine debating that. Imagine like legislating like how many people should be. They don't even support a mask debate. So I don't want to get too far into the concern that I would have, but just the realistic nature of an emergency. Hopefully we'll never go through it again. But you need one person. Even Republican governors said you need one person during an emergency to call the shots, and that's the governor. And if the first constitutional amendment, I think changes the way it can get overridden, which is a simple majority. The second one is it expires after 21 days. So I mean, we've been operating under the opioid epidemic emergency order for a few years now, and every so often he renews it. It's the same order. It allows for Narcan to be prescribed. There's some funding components to it. It's an emergency. We are dealing with an emergency. But what this second one would do is expire it after 21 days, and then he could only renew it if it was like significantly or substantially different. So he couldn't just renew every 21 days. He'd have to go back to the legislature constantly and negotiate. It would really be, I think, a detriment to, future governors who are going to have to handle these things. But what's interesting is, I think the things that are under the emergency powers that he's used, it's helped with unemployment, it's helped with telemedicine, it's helped with regulatory reviews. Everyone was upset that you couldn't buy a car during the closure, and it wasn't necessarily it wasn't the shopping, it was that you needed a notary, and we couldn't have people face to face doing notaries. So under the emergency powers, he created a remote notary. I mean, it was stuff that we tried to legislate telehealth 2 or 3 years ago, and it kept getting screwed up. So I mean, that's where the benefit of bold action. Maybe in the future there should be more bipartisanness of conversations going on, but it's hard to talk to people when they're trying to impeach you. So I get the mode of the frustration, but we have to, I think, operate what's best for the citizens of Pennsylvania. So that's kind of where we went. I mean, even you'll remember when they pursued the termination, the confusion that it created. They voted for this resolution that ended the order. Well, that just created more confusion, because I'm getting emails, well, can I go to the bar now? I mean, geez, who wants to go to a bar during a pandemic? But like, people were so just kind of what information's true, what's factual. And then when the Supreme Court, and they've done it a few times, when the Supreme Court overturned them and said, no, the governor's in his power to have this emergency, they try to impeach the Supreme Court. Justice Wecht had amendments, resolutions to impeach him a few times. So they don't like being told no. They want to control the process, and this is one thing that they just couldn't control. And and it's a shame. It's over masks. I mean, they think that the mask is the public health. I mean, the restaurant closures, the business closures, they're all health orders. They weren't emergency declaration. So it'll be interesting if this were to pass, what kind of confusion it would create. Then. So I'm more interested to hear what Joanna's got to say, because she's definitely ready to go. But that's kind of where we are. It's the partisanness. It's the lack of ability to control the outcome. The majority party didn't like, And it's a real threat that this is going to pass because it's a difficult to understand. It's a quick small paragraph, and without a full context, people probably want the emergency order to be done. They want the emergency to be done. Not that the pandemic's not done. They don't want these restrictions. But imagine having to decide to close schools statewide legislatively. It would be, I mean, there's no way they could do it. So that when that happened, it freed up federal dollars, it freed up SNAP benefits. I mean, it freed up a lot of ability to do some responses to it that we couldn't legislate our way out of that. So Joanne, I'll give it back to you, Tim.
I just wanted to ask about some of the mechanics of this, so we're clear. When there's a constitutional amendment proposed that goes through the legislature, that has to pass in 2 consecutive sessions, and our sessions in the General Assembly are 2 years in length. So this was legislation, I believe, that passed in the 1920 legislative session, and then was passed again this year. That's why it's appearing on the ballot. That's correct?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I went into the weeds a little bit. So amending the Constitution is a tall order. It's complicated. 2 consecutive sessions, the exact same language has to pass. So it's 2020 when they and it has to be kind of within. It has to be before August of the election of the second year of the session, because there has to be advertising requirements. So it passed in August. It got advertised before the November election. So we'll let the public know this is something that's could be coming up next time, and it's supposed to let voters know that who they vote for the legislature could be addressing this. So it's designed to be very open and transparent. I'm not sure how I mean, these things go through so fast. And then in January, we came back, started a new session. And first week, we were voting on these, and there was another advertising requirement to make sure it was on this May's primary. Once it's those the legislature acts, the Department of State has to do the advertising, and then the Department of State comes up with the language of the question. Then the Attorney General reviews that and comes up with like a plain language interpretation, which is usually like 4 times as long as the paragraph that we vote on, and they're both very confusing. So there is it's designed to be something that you just can't do at the whim, right? It's 2 consecutive sessions. There was an election in between that. If you are uber responsive citizen, you should call your legislators, your candidates. What are you going to do if this ballot question comes up on the second term? I have a bill, just because these have happened. This one, there was probably a lot of hearings because it was so much debated last summer. But I have a change to our House rules to require legislative hearings on any proposed constitutional amendment, because so many times, Marcy's Law, the judicial gerrymandering effort, they put them up right at that last minute in August. No hearing, no chance to amend. We got to get it done, and then the second, like, oh, there'll be plenty of time to talk about it, and then the same thing, they try to jam it through. So that I think requirement would be good. Just another level of looking at the changing the Constitution should be hard, and it's once you do it, you can't just rescind it. Then you'd have to change the Constitution again. So they should be really thoughtful, serious matters. And I really thank you guys for having this forum just to even talk about it, because it's something that could affect your profession and your patients and the whole community in a very negative way.
Yeah, this is Kathy, the moderator. We have a raised hand over here. Becca Zillner, the PACE chair, has been waiting patiently. So Becca.
Representative Briggs, I just have a question, and I'm just going to kind of reframe something that you said, and if you don't mind touching on it again. So you mentioned that the opioid crisis, for example, is something that was like an emergency declaration that just continues to get extended. So if something like this were to pass and something wouldn't be able to be passed the same again, like something like that would be affected, correct? Like something that's already emergency declaration that just
all emergency declarations would be
Okay.
affected.
Okay, I just wanted to make it clear. Thank you.
Yeah, and you know, and maybe Tim or someone else may be able to highlight this. I mean, one of the concerns of the emergency declaration is it has something. I should Google this before I say it. It has something to do with gun ownership, firearm ownership. So I don't know if it's under an emergency declaration there might be a prohibition to conceal carry, and there is some sort of control aspect that folks are worried about. And instead of dealing with that aspect, it's also motivated people just to toss it out. So as we listen to Joanne, I'm going to actually Google that so I can talk about it a little bit more.
All right. You keep mentioning that which I do have a few things to say, so I'll suppose I'll jump in. But all right. So okay, and I think one of those questions really kind of focuses in on one of the main things that we've heard from our members whenever we talk about these constitutional amendments or what our position is on it. We always get the question of like, well, you know, all right, so right now we like Governor Wolf. You know, what happens if somebody else is elected that we don't like as governor? Will we still feel the same way about these ballot initiatives? And I mean, we've done some pretty careful consideration and discussion and deliberation about that within like our leadership group here. Which includes, of course, our PACE chair and our legislative chair and our board president and our communications committee chair and our social justice committee chair. And the answer that we came up with was that we would. And a lot of that like ties back into that it's not that almost every emergency declaration that would come out is going to be something that impacts social work in some way. You know, we have we have like some sort of natural disaster. You know, I know we're not I came from Florida previously, and we had we had hurricanes every other month for a while. You know, you'd have those kind of natural disasters, and who would be in there? It'd be social workers in there doing mental health and other kind of disaster response to that. You know, we have a public health crisis like we have now. We're going to have social workers working in in that public health arena. You know, we have something like the opioid epidemic, and we certainly have social workers working in that arena. And so whenever we have one of these emergency declarations, it enables the governor to activate, to make things happen faster than they could in the legislative arena, and that includes like procurement, like schools, social service agencies, universities, local school districts, et cetera, are able to have procurement waivers to quickly buy supplies or hire staff. It frequently enables counties or nonprofits to apply for disaster loans, especially if it connects back to a federal disaster, that then those loans are forgivable loans so that they really kind of turn into grants. That really might impact a lot of the agencies that we would work with as social workers. And then the big one that has really come into play with COVID-19, which is that it enables, in order to activate the workforce that is needed to deal with the emergency declaration, it's a lot of things related to licensure, training, renewal of licensure, a lot of those regulations that happen in normal circumstances can be waived or suspended to reduce the barriers to help those professionals qualified to assist in the crisis. And that, I think, has really been the one that we've seen, especially during COVID, because COVID, of course, and closing all of the doors, it completely changed the way that social workers needed to practice. And yet, people were more in need of services than ever before. And yet we weren't able to help them in the same way because our offices were closed too. We couldn't do the same face-to-face kind of counseling that we normally could. So we had things happen during COVID, like telehealth, where insurance companies are mandated to provide services during telehealth. Like Representative Briggs said, they've been trying to pass a telehealth bill in the legislature for at least as long as I've been here in Pennsylvania, which is going on 6 years now. It has huge, wide support among Republicans and Democrats, but it never gets through because of just like details about abortion medications, a matter of fact, that have stood in the way of getting any kind of solid telehealth bill through. We've had things about people being able to provide social work services to people like Pennsylvania college students that had to return home during the shutdown so that they could continue to see their therapist. We've been able to count telehealth towards requirements for licensure. We've been able to waive the requirements for face-to-face supervision and continuing education and stuff like that. And all of these things, every once in a while, especially on that telehealth bill, every single time that those things are about to, that the governor's emergency declaration is about to expire, social workers, especially private practitioners from all over the Commonwealth, are calling us to tell us, hey, I got this letter that's telling me that, from my insurance company, that they're going to stop reimbursing for telehealth services, starting in, May, for example. And then the emergency declaration gets extended, and then they're required to provide reimbursement for telehealth again. But because of those letters, we know that would, that's directly tied into the emergency declaration, and that if the emergency declaration were to end tomorrow, so would a lot of social workers' ability to get reimbursed for providing telehealth services. And yes, can the legislature fix it? Absolutely, they can, but they, with excusing our representatives who are here and a lot of us that are on the same side, they can't get out of their own way enough to, to get the telehealth bill passed.
I mean,
Joanna,
it's gridlock. It is
right.
I mean, telehealth has been a challenge. Like you said, 6 years. I mean, it was broadly supported. I mean, the insurance industry had concerns. I think the last year showed that those concerns, they can work through those concerns, but you can't, it's hard to legislate. The eviction moratorium, a lot of the federal grant money that was, the few times we legislated those grant applications, we screwed it up. And then there's no way to tweak it. And then, we ended up potentially losing money. So you're right on that the efficiency that an order, could allow a limited number of people to, I mean, I don't think we can't live like this forever. There is a role of the legislature. But if you have to get something done in a short period of time and pivot and change, I mean, the legislature does this. I mean, it takes what's in like the committee, then 24 hours before the committee meeting, then first consideration, second consideration, third consideration. It's like a week, before you can send a bill to the Senate, and the Senate goes a little bit faster. So maybe 2 weeks, that you could fastest address a bill, unless it's something awful. Then they tend to be able to work that pretty quick. But So you're touching on a lot of positives of the way it is now. So
this is Kathy. I'm going to step out of the moderator role for a little bit. A little self-disclosure. I actually work in the insurance industry, so and I'm not speaking for my employer, but I'm just thinking, just a point of clarification with what Joanna said about reimbursements. It's a matter of getting the co-payments, not necessarily the reimbursements. So just so that nobody has a heart attack here, about the reimbursement thing. So,
of course.
I think that title of chief executive, it really matches up with the duties and what hinges on that person's ability to act quickly, not only in terms of the presenting concern, whatever disaster, health crisis, whatever it is, but then too, we're hitting on the aftermath. The federal funding that may not be able to come through because of a lack of a declaration or an extension of an order, or the things that the representative was talking about in terms of grants that went away. And so it's really twofold, I guess, is how I see this. It's the immediacy of dealing with the emergency, and then those things into the aftermath. The result of maybe an inaction or inability to act by a larger body that's really not designed for that.
I mean, this is, and I should have looked at this too. This is a national attempt, and it's actually a bipartisan movement that's going on across state legislatures to restrict their executive branch's power. So, we're seeing a Republican legislature trying to reduce a Democratic governor's executive powers, but it's happening in Republican legislatures against Republican governors, and Democratic legislators against Republican. Well, not too many Republican governors have handled this correctly, but it is this effort for the legislature to bring it back even more than I think is responsible. But it's not just in Pennsylvania. It's in many. I think 20 some states have similar types of efforts being made.
Yeah, and from like a board standpoint, we had a big discussion at our last board meeting about these ballot initiatives, and we took it, as a board of directors, we decided to oppose, what was, how like encouraging our members to vote no, because of a lot of the same reasons what you discussed, Representative Briggs. So I really appreciate how you explained, the thought work behind it too, from a representative standpoint. So thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. And what was interesting early on, I guess, and not early on, it was all a blur, March, April, May. It was a time in my life I hope we don't have to do again, but as we all dealt with it. But I remember Governor Ridge, former Republican Governor Ridge, wrote an op-ed saying, the governor has to have these powers. Governor Corbett was quoted as saying, Governor, like as Tim said, it's chief executive. You need somebody figuring it out, and they are elected by the whole Commonwealth to deal with these issues, and the gridlock of partisanness and ideology and special interests, it's not designed to move quickly. I wish there was a real debate about maybe 90 days, coming back to the legislature to have a conversation. I think there might have been a way to address, some reforms that wasn't, a complete elimination after 21 days or a simple majority that, the will of we all get, I mean, if it was just based on the pressure we were getting from constituents who wanted, like I said, to go to the movies and to play golf and to, it's hard. It was hard to stand with him not hard in a, it was the right thing to do, so it was important. But there was people outside my house, there was protesters, real estate agents were upset. I mean, name calling. It wasn't our best moment as Pennsylvanians. And I would hope if it was Governor Corbett or Governor Ridge or Governor Wolf handling it, I would have supported them all the same if they were trying to protect people. So I'm a proud progressive Democrat, but I don't let that get in the way of doing what's right. Like it's so that could probably haunt me at some point down the road. But I mean, it's a shame that so many people in the legislature made it about politics so quickly, and it was the farthest thing in my mind. I mean, what political playbook is it to like shut down the economy? Like what it was mind numbing to think, people still think it was a fraud, that this isn't, that the masking is wrong and the vaccines are wrong. I mean, it's just that misinformation and the lack of wanting to be controlled by people. It seems way worse than it ever did before. So that I don't know what point I was trying to make, but if there was a realistic conversation about what's the best way to reform an emergency declaration, I think we probably could have found some consensus and something that we all felt comfortable supporting. But that's not, it was one-sided, and it's going to take May 18th to find out how bad this could be. And we have to do everything we can. It's great, Chrissy Jo King, that you took the leadership and your board made that position. But it's we need to make sure we tell our family and friends and everyone we come across that this would be bad for social workers and all the people that you guys take care of. So
yeah, thank you. I really think that like what I think social workers need to remember is that voting is social work. Advocacy is social work. It's so important that whenever we come up with a position, that we do carry that on not only to our colleagues and others in our profession, but also to our neighbors and to our friends and to our families, and have those difficult conversations on why we're standing on this ground. I mean, I'm just like just mind boggled to think that how much this is going to impact Pennsylvania if it gets voted into. I mean, it's really terrifying to kind of think how that could play out in the years to come. So I really hope that, the social work profession, since we had this beautiful gathering tonight, that you take it on and you share this information with your family and friends and colleagues, and encourage them to watch the recording that we're going to share and everything like that. So, yeah.
Well, with about 20 minutes left, I have a couple of thoughts about where to go from here. I'm thinking we need to at least touch on the third constitutional amendment, even though, it's not exceptionally controversial. And then Becca, if you can kind of talk us through what folks need to know about voting and, especially like registered independents, that sort of thing. And then I figure we could probably need to leave a little bit of time in case our friends who joined us might have a little bit of questions, comments, concerns there too. So who wants to, I can do it, but I want to share the wealth. So who wants to take on the third initiative?
I'll just say, from my understanding, it seems as though we're being asked to include in the state constitution that it would be wrong to discriminate against race or national origin. And it's a yes or no question. Yes, I believe it's wrong to discriminate against someone on the basis of race or national origin. And again, maybe the representative has more information on it.
I wondered about the implications of putting this, of codifying it into the Constitution.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was an amendment that Senator Hughes introduced to the first ballot question in 2020 of one of these. So they ended up putting two questions into one bill. And I'm not sure what the intent was when I saw that come through the House. I thought it was an intent to try to stop it from happening because they didn't think, you know, they would pursue that and all the way, and then try to maybe amend it out and then buy another term. But ACLU has come out in support of it. I know there's a lot of groups who thought it should be more broader, protecting more of our neighbors, which I would agree to. And they were concerned that maybe since it's only naming is it race and national origin, maybe it would exclude what the groups are getting larger, more categorized. Maybe it would exclude certain people. But I think I'm with Tim. I'm going to vote yes because it's something that should be done. Some lawyers are concerned about what it could mean down the road. But it was Democratic Senator Vince Hughes, who's a leader in my eyes for racial inequality, and it was his language that this was. Maybe it was trying to disrupt the movement of the underlying bill regarding the emergency declaration, but it created some should we vote politics, right? Like if we vote against the emergency declaration, are they going to criticize us for voting against equality? Like that was the level of games that were going on. So Joanna, what's your position or view of this?
I think we decided to, I think in part because of that, because of seeing some of the support from other groups that we tend to be, aligned with, and learning that it was, from Representative Hughes. I mean, the language seems pretty straightforward, and certainly our code of ethics demands that we fight and combat any kind of discrimination based on race or et cetera. So I think we're on board with saying yes. So currently our position is, vote no, and yes.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, I think people were suspicious because they saw the two bad ones. And why would the Republican legislature vote on? They thought they were being duped. So I'm glad ACLU did a pretty good analysis of it. They're in my eyes, a very well-regarded, legal experts regarding the constitutional issues and criminal justice and a lot of issues. But so I was glad they stood in. I think the League of Women Voters has been revisiting it because they. And some allied groups that I work with, some in southeastern PA, were definitely concerned. So I think a yes vote. There's also a fourth ballot question. It's not a constitutional amendment that I'm not sure if it's at the top or if it's at the bottom of the ballot. I'm voting in person this year, which was another. We did Act 77, which allowed mail-in voting, but there was some changes that the governor had to make just to make it work smoother, right? Because we couldn't figure it out and the courts had to step in. That's another, he could have much more drastically used emergency powers to, some states did all mail-in because of the pandemic. So, hopefully, anyway, it has to do with loans to professional paid fire departments. There's a loan program that volunteer fire departments could apply to. I think it's been underutilized. And I believe there's 18 paid departments that could benefit from borrowing that. So it actually would require statewide ballot approval to enlarge the qualifying people for that program. So there is another one. I'm going to vote yes for that. Some folks who are not into spending money, I mean, it passed pretty much unanimous, but Even people in Pennsylvania are more conservative than members of the General Assembly. So there's some controversy over that.
I'll just say that NASW-PA is not going to take an official position one way or the other.
Nothing on firefighter grants.
Yeah.
But it is someplace, and it's going to be a big ballot. It's going to take up a lot of space.
Mm-hmm. All right, Becca, can you fill us in on voting?
Yeah, absolutely. So as your PACE chair, I'm going to sit here and tell you to vote, 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 vote every time, all the time, because like I am a super, go ahead, Kathy.
I was going to say, just vote once, please. Just vote once.
But I mean, in every and forever. As a super voter, I've never missed an election since I turned 18. I'm very proud of that. I plan on staying that way. And I mailed in my first absentee ballot last year, actually during the pandemic. Very quick and easy process. If you request your mail-in ballot, comes in the mail, and then you just drop it back in. It's super easy, very beneficial, and I'm totally for mail-in ballots. If you feel like that's necessary. I plan on voting in person because I miss going to the ballot box and pushing the little buttons. It's fun to me. But I guess just because I'm a super voter and it's, just the nostalgia. So I haven't pushed a button in a long time. So feel the power. So just a couple of things about voting. So if you have never been registered before, awesome, perfect, especially if you've never been registered in Pennsylvania before, you can just fill out for first-time voter registration. It's super easy. You can do it online. All you need is basically your information of where you live, and they'll mail a voter card to you, and then it'll tell you where to report to. And then when you go for the first time, you have to take that voter card with you with a valid ID with your name on it, so that they can match you to your persons. And then they'll let you vote, and then they won't ask for that card again. You can just go now that they know who you are. You do need to fill out a new voter registration if you have not voted in the last 4 years, or if you have never been registered in PA before. So I highly recommend doing that if you haven't before. You can check your registration status online. So if you're concerned about your registration, I totally say if you haven't voted and you're like, I can't remember the last time, it's been a couple of years, so just check and make sure, because it's super easy. Obviously it's free and it's super quick to just do, super fast. So I totally say just check your registration if you're concerned about that. You can also change or update your current registration. So if you've moved lately, gotten married, or unfortunately divorced and changed your name, you have to update your voter registration that way. So like I just moved a couple of months ago, and actually when I changed my ID card, they asked me if I wanted to just update my voter registration status, which I said yes. And then the new county sent me my voter registration information in the mail. So that's also, you can do all this online, which is the best. So I recommend just like Googling it, but also NASW sent out this very nice and collected email, like I don't remember what we called it, a specialty newsletter blast. I'm not sure we had a name for it, but that's what we're going to call it. That's a new name. And it's at the very bottom of that. So it's super easy. I put all the links in there for you to just click on them. You can also request a mail-in ballot online as well. So if you are still kind of concerned about going to your polls and you want to vote in person, you want to vote by mail, you can request your mail-in ballot. Your completed application to register to vote needs to be completed by Tuesday, May 11th, because it's a week before the election. And then your voter registration has to be, your mail-in ballot has to be turned in by May 18th. So that's kind of just the tidbits and pieces of voter registration in a nutshell. That's my elevator speech, and not to get super high on my pedestal, but also just to comment on some of the things that Representative Briggs said about, control and power, and some of the things that Tim Sipe said as well. We're a government that runs on that. We have executive power. That's the way that the United States is run. That's why the president has executive powers, and that's also why the governor has executive powers. So I just wanted to add that as I was sitting here like, yes.
Sure thing. And then I think the only other thing that I would add onto the wonderful information that Becca just shared, is that, of course, Pennsylvania is a closed primary state. So when you go and vote on May 18th, you'll get the ballot for, the Democratic side or only for the Republican side. If you are registered as an independent voter, you may, some folks might think, okay, well, am I even going to get anything because I can't vote in the Democrat side or the Republican side? The ballot initiatives are nonpartisan, so you can and you can also, of course, vote in any nonpartisan race. But regardless, go in, even if you're an independent voter, go in, get your ballot, and vote on these ballot initiatives. Okay, with that, I know we have does anybody have any questions, comments, or anything that they would like to share from our audience members?
I don't see anything in the comments, nor do I see any hands raised. So
I just can't help myself. So BZ did an awesome job of describing voting and registering and the ballots. The only revision I'm going to make is if you vote by mail, I'm pretty sure it has to be received by them by May 18th. So if you have a drop box, you can drop it off. But if you mail it, you should mail it a little bit before the 18th, just because
Postal day.
Mail has been a little bit unpredictable these days. Yeah. But I think you said that, but I just wanted to, that was a challenge.
I just registered to vote permanently, vote by mail, and it turns out you have to send an affirmation every year that you want it, and it's not postage paid, just so you know.
It's permanent for that year. It's not.
Exactly.
I voted against Act 77, just so everyone's aware. It was a poorly written bill. It says it's a permanent registration, but you have to, like you said, you have to do it every year.
You guys need a thesaurus, okay?
Sure thing. And I got the same thing. And I'm kind of like Becca. I wanted to go back to in-person voting, and I'm fully vaccinated now, so I don't feel like the same kind of nervousness that I did, that I did last year. So I did not return that form, even though I did do mail-in balloting last year, and this year I'll be going to my polling place.
Yeah, Montgomery County, just for, people who are interested in voting, I think we had 260,000 people vote by mail in November, and their first batch they sent out for the primary was 75,000. So 75,000 people did what Catherine said and renewed or reaffirmed. So I think that's a lot, but a lot of people are doing what we're doing, I think, and waiting to, would like to vote in person, or they didn't know they had to do the extra paperwork. So I can't wait to see my poll workers and vote in person and see my neighbors. I mean, I voted for the first time in mail primary and again in November, but I'm looking forward to doing it in person.
This is my flex about voting. So Professor Bender, you know where St. Benedict is, up there near Spangler and Barnesboro, right?
Yes, I do. The Queen of Hastings, yes.
Yep, I'm near Hastings. That's where I live now. My poll place is about half a block from my house. I'm always voter number one. So the last 4 years. So
voter number one, huh?
Voter number one every year.
Out of a total of how many?
Right,
like 50. Yeah.
Just to reiterate the deadlines that are upcoming. We have May 3rd is the last day to register if you want to vote in the primary election. And then May 11th is the last day you can request an absentee ballot. I would say don't wait. Try and get that request in as soon as possible.
Yesterday.
Agreed. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have this panel. When we decided to go ahead and have this panel, we decided to have it quickly, because we knew that people were already getting in their mail-in ballots, and some were working on that and returning them. So we sent out our email fast, and we put together this panel fast, and we're hoping that, to help get the word out. But we also have some intentions to try to reach our members, to try to reach a bigger audience. I mean, of course, we have we're happy to talk to the small group, and we'll make this recording available to everyone, but we have more than 4,000 members across the Commonwealth, all of whom are potential voters. And we figure that it's not just about, changing your mind about whether to vote yes or no. I mean, we obviously, we have a position, but we can't tell, you can vote your conscience no matter what that is. But we figure the bigger task is that we may have some voters who aren't super voters like Becca, and who may tend to vote only in like the presidential election, or in the or in the congressional races, or maybe even vote annually, but but voting in May isn't something that's automatically on your agenda the way that it is in November. So we want to make sure that we reach as many folks as possible, and just remind you to to get out and vote, whether that be mail-in voting or or going to your polling place.
Yeah, one more thing to add to about your voter registration. If you are concerned about like not seeing the questions for some reason, you can also change your party pretty easily. You can do that online as well. But if there's any concern, if you're registered not affiliate or independent or something, and you're concerned about that, you can always register under a party. And you can change that honestly as many times as you want. Some people change it like every single year, depending on what's on the ballot. So just a little caveat as well. Just being in a close primary state, we have to be registered as a party.
All right, and with that, and with knowing that our other group is going to need to get kicked off, I think we should probably wrap up. So thank you so much to all of our panelists, and our lovely moderator, and our special guest with Representative Briggs. Thank you to everybody, and please, if you have any questions or concerns as everything comes up, please reach out to us. You can reach out to NASW chapter office with questions anytime. My personal email is jbird.naswpa@socialworkers.org. All right, thank you. I'm going to stop recording now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. 4 minutes.